Good morning. This is Robert Frank. It is April 27th, 2019, and we're still reading in Laskaya, Born for Love book. And we'll just start off with we're in the segment called Love is Constant. It is we who are fickle. Love does guarantee people betray love, can always be trusted. People cannot. Interesting. The last one on that particular part is called Security and Loving. We cannot live by love alone. Powerful though it may be, when I was growing up in my large family, we constantly subsisted below the poverty level. Food was often scarce. Space was at a premium in a house built for half our number. And clothing was almost always hand-me-downs. Still, we not only survived, we thrived. I was certainly aware that there were others who had more things than we did, but the security that came from love was a powerful compensation. We had each other. We were never lonely. We had Mama's sense of humor and culinary magic. How'd she prepare wonderful meals with so little to work with? I'll never know. We had Papa's warmth and gardening skills. How he brought such bounty from such a small plot of land mystifies me still. Love was always there to help us overcome whatever lack there was. More importantly, we all gained a deep insight into what the real basic need truly was. Quote by Oscar Wilde: keep love in your heart. A life without it is like a sunless garden when the flowers are dead. Those of us that are in or near my age category remember those times very well. I can even remember growing up being referred to as a war baby. Later in life, I discovered an interesting stat that said, interestingly enough, fewer babies were born in 1942 than had been born in previous years and years thereafter. So according to that stat, there's not a whole lot of us that were born in 1942. Anyway, we're beginning a new segment, which is called Most of Us Remain Strangers to Ourselves, hiding who we are, and ask other strangers hiding who they are to love us. And as usual, my sinus is driving me crazy. And apologize for that. Not much I can do about it. It's just there. It's just there. That's all. Woke up a little later again. But it looks like the sun's out. It's going to be a nice day. We'll start the first one off, which is called Love Thrives on Continual Enrichment. To have a long-lasting relationship, we must avoid complacency. More love has been lost on the island of contentment than in any sea of torment. Love demands that we keep our minds open and stimulated, which is really easier than we think. It can be an accomplishment in 100 simple ways. I know a couple who had been married over 40 years and have never stopped growing. She is presently in a watercoloring class, while he is attending an income tax preparation seminar. Together, they are studying Italian in anticipation of a trip to southern Italy. There is no time in their life for boredom, and I've never known them to run out of something to share. Relationships do not grow or remain stimulating without conscious effort. We must take the time to enrich our lives and therefore our love, or we are merely coexisting complacency killers. Quote from John Henry Cardinal Newman, "Growth is the only evidence of life." Each segment that we read over is, in fact, very enlightening. And does have a tremendous amount of truth to what it's saying. A moment to think about what is read is always, in my mind, a good thing. Gives us a moment to contemplate. But we must move on. The next one is called Hearing the Sounds of Love. Most of us are poor listeners, if we actually listen at all. Misunderstandings because of poor listening habits have caused more unhappiness and pain than we'll ever know. The cost in loneliness, broken hearts, wasted time, and injury is immeasurable. We tend to be selective listeners. At best, hearing about half of what is said and filtering out things we deem unimportant. Even when we feel we are truly listening, we often tend to hear the wrong message. We hear what we desire or expect to hear rather than what is actually being said. But there is hope for those of us concerned with loving communication. Listening is a learned art. Love is a perfect impetus for working at that art, if for no other reason than to teach us the painful consequences of turning people out. Concern for the feelings and well-being of others goes a long way toward changing our listening habits. We hear best when we love. Listening is love in action. A quote by Dean Russ: one of the best ways to persuade others is with your ears, by listening to them. How true, how true. Some of these, obviously, like in my case, hit a little closer to home than maybe some others, but I've often said that it's really extremely hard to listen when you're thinking. Because if you're thinking about what to say, then obviously you're not listening, which means that sometimes you end up saying the wrong thing because you didn't hear what was said. And it's probably very true for 90% of us or more to do that every single day and possibly in every conversation. Someone says something, let's say in the first sentence, and immediately you're preparing your comeback to what they said in that first sentence, not listening to the rest of the conversation, and therefore losing what the prime directive of that communication was supposed to be about. And therefore, when you respond, or your reaction to the first sentence, in many cases, is totally and completely wrong, simply because you didn't listen to everything that was being said. In my case, I think, one could contemplate about that pretty much all day long. And I think the other one that pops in my head as I'm thinking here, and that is sometimes or many times, if you're not thinking, you're saying in your head, without listening, of course, please shut up, I got something to say. Will you ever stop talking? Well, when you're thinking those things, obviously you're not listening. And it's probably a very hard habit to break. To be able to listen to what someone is saying from beginning to end is obviously a challenge. At least in my mind. I don't know. I might be wrong. Okay, the next one I'm going to read is called "To Move Closer to Love, We Must Sometimes Move Away from It." At times, it is only by distancing ourselves temporarily from a seemingly hopeless situation that we can begin to engage in the acts necessary for regeneration. Stepping away from the problem provides us with the time to analyze and reorganize. It is surprising how often a solution is close at hand. Friends, counselors, family, books, or workshops are good sources for discovering new alternatives. But we must be willing to take the required time to find our solutions. When we move away from waning love for the sake of gaining new insights, we are not running from our problem, but rather moving toward possible solutions. Quote by M. Scott Peck: "We cannot solve life's problems except by solving them." I see that as a very unique object to be able to know when to back away. I'm sure many of us don't back away because we're not aware or are not knowing in our own mind's eye that just maybe it's time to back away and take a different perspective or look at what's going on. Goes back to listening. There's obviously a time that maybe one should back away and open up their ears and shut their mind. Oh, ho, ho, what do I know? The next little segment that I'm going to read is called Love Compliments. We think we are usually far more generous with compliments to friends than to those we love most dearly. This happens despite the fact that behavioral scientists and our instincts tell us that compliments affect behavior far more powerfully than criticism. We all need to bask in the warmth and approval of someone we respect. Otherwise, our personal dignity becomes seriously endangered. We have become so unaccustomed to compliments that they seem to embarrass both the giver and the receiver. We are quick to criticize, yet so guarded with praise. If the new outfit looks great, what harm can come from saying so? If the hairdo suits, why not comment? If someone is doing a good job, it can only reinforce the person to tell them so. Praise, like love, is only meaningful when freely shared. Quote by Basil Pascal. Vanity is so secure in the heart of man that everyone wants to be admired. Even I who write this, and you who read this. How true, how true, how true. Criticism in today's world seems to have become a way of life. To pay a compliment is almost unheard of. Why is that? I don't know. Hey, girl. I am doing my reading, if you like this. Okay. The next one I'm going to read is called Love and Trauma. Most of our trauma come through loss, death, divorce, failing health, financial setback, or broken friendships. No life is ever free of such emotionally painful experiences. There is no way to avoid them. They are part of the reality of existence. Being traumatized threatens our total equilibrium, especially when the loss is irreversible. What was once accepted as usual and predictable suddenly seems bizarre and unsettling. It takes time to accept the irreversibility of a loss. Adjusting to a life that will never be the same can expose weaknesses within ourselves. Great courage is often needed to adapt and carry on. But it can also reveal strengths and resources we never knew we had. Still, the first and usual response to loss is to feel pity for ourselves and place blame on someone or something for our misfortune. We accuse God, society, or loved ones, anyone at hand. Actually, when we take the responsibility of overcoming our traumas, we become better acquainted with ourselves and achieve a greater acceptance of life. A time of pain or loss of hope can be awakening, which opens us to ourselves, dispels our ignorance, and erases our false perceptions. The only lasting trauma is the one we suffer without positive change. In time, our pain subsides, our wounds heal, and we discover an all-important truth. What remains, after all, is the most valuable thing we possess: life itself. A quote by Don Marcus: happiness is the interval between periods of unhappiness. Are you being good, rascal? Hey, girl. That's fine, girl. You're welcome to come down here anytime you want. And right now, I'm just doing a recording. It's recording, so whatever I say, I don't know if it can hear you because you're quite a ways from here, but they can hear everything I'm saying. Uh, they might, but like I said, you're way back there, so they may not hear what you're saying. Yes, they can hear it because I got microphone right in front of my voice here. Okay, the next segment that I'm going to read is called The Changing Face of Love. Since love is never experienced in the same way twice, it always confounds and challenges us. Every new love calls for unique behaviors, full use of our rational and intuitive selves. Each new situation comes with its own complex demands. We bring our past experiences to bear upon each new love only to discover that they seem useless, compelling us to discover novel, ingenious ways to deal with them. Old habits, styles, and attitudes no longer seem to serve this love's new demands. But we need never fear the changing face of love, because we only fail at love when we behave as if we know it all. Quote by E.B. White: the only sense that is common in the long run is the sense of change, and we all instinctively avoid it. Now, that is the end of that particular segment. And the next chapter or segment is called Giving In is an Important Kind of Giving When People Love Each Other. Now, the first one that I'm going to read is called The Power of Human Love. A little bit different. As human beings, none of us is perfect. Frailties and imperfections abound. We succumb to anger, impetuousness, revenge, stubbornness, conceit, irrationality, lack of compassion, lack of humility, destructiveness, mischievousness, fearfulness, pridefulness, cunning, falsehood, dishonesty, indecision, cowardlessness, prejudice, hate. When we love each other in spite of these imperfections, we begin to realize the inexplicable power of love. Quote by Dag Hammarskjöld, "The truth is so simple that it is regarded as pretentious vanity." Interesting. The next little segment that I'm going to read is called Love and Hope. There is no medicine like hope, no tonic more powerful than the belief that every trauma has a solution. The ability to hope allows us to face the trials of daily life. It reminds us that no matter what happens, we will prevail. No one need be a hopeless victim. Few situations are completely without remedy. With hope, we can change a potential tragedy into an achievement. If the situation won't change, we can change to meet the situation. For those who believe, hope does indeed spring eternal. Quote from Norman Cousins. The capacity for hope is the most significant fact of life. It provides human beings with a sense of distinction and the energy to get started. And as usual, my sinus won't leave me alone. Duh. Oh yeah, it's a recording. Well, they may not, but they can see my nose running and my sniff. They can hear me sniffling, so I just. Oh no, this is not. This is not in any sense professional. It's designed just for those who wish to listen to the readings from the book. I'm just answering your question. All right, the next segment that I'm going to read is called Love and Compassion. We are still incomplete creatures floundering in a complex, challenging world in which compassion helps to save us all. When we are compassionate, we become more realistic in our expectations, less demanding, and more flexible. We are less likely to inflict wounds, hurt feelings, and indulge in recriminations. We allow for human frailty and change. Put more simply, we permit people to be who they are and to act upon what they feel, encouraging them to become more themselves. Compassion is an act of tolerance where kindness and forgiveness reign. When we make the compassionate choice, we enhance the dignity of each individual, which is the very essence of loving them. The quote by Theodore Isaac Rubin: "But since human beings are inherently compassionate, compassion in them can be awakened and generated, whatever their age and however horrendous their past experiences have been." We allow a short period of time here for contemplation to consider what has been read. So we'll move on to the next segment, which is called Being Who We Are. People who feel good about themselves are not necessarily easily threatened by the future. They enthusiastically maintain a secure image, whether everything is falling apart or going their way. They hold to a firm base of personal assuredness and self-respect that remains constant. Though they are concerned about what others think of them, it is a healthier concern. They find external forces more challenging than threatening. Perhaps the greatest sign of maturity is to reach the point in life when we embrace ourselves, strengths and weaknesses alike, and acknowledge that we are all that we have a right to a happy and productive life, and the power to change ourselves and our environment within realistic limitations. In short, we are, each of us, entitled to be who we are and become what we choose. Quote by Nathaniel Hawthorne: Every individual has a place to fill in this world and is important in some respect, whether he chooses to be or not. It looks like we may be able to finish this particular segment, so I'm going to go ahead and continue on. The next segment is called blame. Most of us are experts at blame. We've learned to lay our failures and problems conveniently at the feet of others. I can't do anything about the way I am, a seriously troubled man said to me. My childhood was a nightmare. 20 years later, this man's life was still on hold because of unhealed wounds. It has become apparent that the heart of his problem was not so much his troublesome past, but his compulsiveness to dwell on it without doing anything about it. Depression, neurosis, chronic unhappiness are not only caused by an event or a person, but also by how a person continues to respond to them. When we realize that we are responsible for freeing ourselves from yokes of the past, we will also free everyone else of this responsibility. Only then can we begin to concentrate more on loving and less on blaming. This time the quote is by Buddha. The man who foolishly does me wrong, I will return to him the protection of my most ungrudgingly love. And the more evil comes from him, the more good shall go from me. The next segment is called A Simple Lesson in Loving. Approach everyone you meet as an individual with dignity and a life as complicated and mysterious as your own. Discard preconceptions and suspense. Even for a moment, the idea that you know this type. Do these things and perhaps you might learn the most important lesson that love can teach us. That each person is worthy of our love simply because they are human. One of God's unique creatures. And begin from there. The quote is by Ashley Montagu. The measure of man's humanity. Montague, excuse me. Thank you for that. The measure of man's humanity is the extent and intensity of his love for mankind. I'm looking at what we got here, and I think we might be able to do the next three, and then we will be done for today. And if I didn't mention before, it is a sunny day here where I'm at in Wells, Nevada. The next one I'm going to read is called Love Doesn't Teach, It Points the Way. Educators and psychologists have confirmed over the years that we learn best from modeling. By observing the behavior of those closest to us, those we admire. For example, it has been determined that parents who want their children to read or appreciate serious music accomplish this best by being readers themselves and surrounding themselves with classical music. If they hope that their children will enjoy the pleasures of good, healthy food, they should cook and share it with them on a regular basis. By their example, they are teaching in the purest sense. My parents were the most consummate examples of lovers I have ever known. My book, Love, is dedicated to them with the following statement. To Tio and Rosa, who didn't teach me how to love, they showed me. Children raised in a loving environment will begin, over time, to define love in terms of what they are experiencing. The more clearly and consistently love is modeled, the more naturally and effortlessly it will become part of their lives. If we want to share love with someone, the most successful strategy is to be the best lover we can and let the rest take care of itself. A quote by Orson Swett Martin. Every experience in life, everything with which we have come in contact in life, is a chisel which has been cutting away at our life statue, molding, modifying, shaping it. We are part of all we have met. Very, very true. But I would say many, and I'm sure it's many, of us may or may have not come from a loving family background. And that in itself is probably very sad. The next segment that I'm going to read is called Lasting Love is Not a Test of Endurance. It is a sorry and often heard refrain that love has vanished from our relationship. As with many such statements, this is unfair to love. It's not love that has disappeared from the relationship. We have lasting love is not a test of endurance. When we are capable to appreciate all the things which brought us together and deepen that appreciation over the years, we stay together. Such a relationship is one of life's greatest success stories. But the good news, the bad news for some people is that success requires effort. Healthy bonds need maintenance. If they are not to remain healthy, obstacles must be overcome or taken in stride. We must take into consideration the pretenses and defenses that threaten love. For our part, we should welcome the mystery, the enthusiasm, and the challenge, which will make us lovers for a lifetime. Quote by Hannah More: obstacles are those frightful things you see when we take your eyes off the goal. So I'm looking at the clock, and we have only one more to read, and I'm going to go ahead and just jump into it so we can finish this last segment here. And then the next segment that we will start on Tuesday will be we are confined in our understanding of other human beings by what we know about ourselves, and that'll be starting on Tuesday. But to finish up here, I'm going to go ahead and read the last one, which is called Worry Never Robs Tomorrow of Its Sorrow. It only saps today of its joy. Some of us find love and commitment a great source of pleasure and or anxiety. We worry about making the right choices. Will the relationship fail? Will we be hurt? If we expose ourselves in intimacy, will we be enough? We worry ourselves, in other words, right out of love. Love becomes a pressure, a frustration, or a source of stress. 90% of what we worry about never happens. We all know this from firsthand experience. Still, we possessively hold on to our worry as if we would be frivolously to let go. Minor problems sent us into a thither. Larger ones threaten to totally unravel us. We see the negative side of everything before we consider the positive. If indeed we even look for the positive. We have a million good reasons for worrying, since we are well versed on everything and everyone that can cause us harm. Worry makes fools of us all. It controls our lives and leaves us with empty hearts and missed experiences. I'm not suggesting that we skip merrily through life, carefree and oblivious. I do suggest that we begin to learn to sort out real concerns from the mass of imaginative and insignificant ones. And then the quote is by Emmanuel Fox. It makes no difference how deeply seated may be the trouble, how hopeless the outlook, how muddled the tangle, how great the mistake. A sufficient realization of love will dissolve it all. And so, like I said, on Tuesday, we'll start with we are confined in our understanding of our human beings by what we know about ourselves. And so we'll move on, and I will say I hope everybody has a fantastic and great day, and I will look forward to seeing you all on Tuesday. So I hope it's sunny where you're at, because it's sunny where I'm at, and so have a great and wonderful day. Bye-bye.